Well, hi everyone. I'm Janet B. I've recovered from compulsive eating and bulimia. Happy to be here with you this Thursday. And today I'm going to talk about a chapter that does not get a lot of airplay, but has a lot of spiritual principles. Two employers on page 136. I believe this is the only chapter in the text of the big book that doesn't have the word God in it. But we will find a lot of spiritual principles, and I think we can also find his fingerprints. So if you have your big book, we are going to start. It opens on page 136. And the author of this chapter starts by telling us about two employees who died. Like this is a serious illness. We are not here because we're people who need to lose 10 pounds or kilos or however we do it, stones to look better for our high school reunion. We are people who this is life and death. And the author of this chapter, page 137, says, there were three exceptional men lost to this world because I did not understand alcoholism as I do now. What irony, I became an alcoholic myself. And but for the intervention of an understanding person, I might have followed in their footsteps. So here's a principle here for us. Be an understanding person. Um, because if not for that, and understanding doesn't just mean people call us and vent and we say, oh, you poor thing. Oh, I understand. Oh, I get it. It means we understand this illness. We can empathize with people who have it, and we can offer a solution understanding, right? One of my sponsees called me recently and said, someone called me and she was just, I just listened because she just was talking about the rough day she had with, this person. I'm like, no, we're not supposed to vent. When we call someone, if we're struggling, we're supposed to call with either a resentment inventory, a fear inventory, or a harms inventory, right? Because that's what we can offer each other. Help with working this program. If I just listen to you tell me about your rotten husband, I'm really not being an understanding person. You're not going to get anything out of it. And they say, but for the intervention of an understanding person, I might have followed their footsteps. And I'm going to add to that because on page 25, it says, but for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations of someone who can't stop. So many want to stop but cannot. So we need the grace of God, right? I could be as understanding and helpful as I want, but I can't give anyone power and no one can give me power. So the grace of God and then the intervention of an understanding person. Okay, page 138. They say, we who have imposed on the best of employers can scarcely blame them if they've been short with us. So if people in our lives are short with us, our boss, people in our family, we need to ask ourselves, have I imposed? Have I asked people to do things for me that I'm perfectly capable of doing myself? It's a spiritual principle. We don't impose on others. And they go ahead and they talk about a guy who was an officer at a very large bank. And he told the author of this chapter that, yeah, there's an executive here who's an alcoholic. And so the author of this chapter, believe it was Hank Parkhurst, but I'm not sure. So let's just call him Hank. If I'm wrong, Harlan will correct me. So let's say Hank says, here's an opportunity to be helpful. So I spent 2 hours talking about alcoholism, the malady, and described the symptoms and results. So a couple things here, right? We always want to look for an opportunity to be helpful. He put in 2 hours. That is a spiritual principle. We put in the time. It's not take two food plans and call me in the morning. We take time. We get to know the person. We get to know their symptoms, their history. Have they been in OA for 20 years and failed? Is this their first meeting? Did they have some success, but then they relapse? We put in the time. And what does he spend the time talking about? The malady, right? Why we are people who want to stop but cannot. Why willpower doesn't work for people like us. And describe the symptoms. What are our symptoms? Resentments, fears, harms to others, and the inability to stop even when we desperately want to. And what did his banker friend say? He said, well, this man will be okay. He had a leave of absence, and we told him if he drinks again, he's fired. So that's the tactic of fear. Well, as we know, fear doesn't work. Fear is not of God. And in fact, on page 67, they say fear is an evil and corroding thread. It set in motion trains the circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. Fear doesn't do it. So to try to, I mean, none of us are recovered because someone said, if you don't recover, you're going to have a heart attack and you're going to leave your children with no mother. And we're like, oh, okay, thanks. I think I'll start a 12-step program. In fact, at an OA convention, I met a woman. She was diabetic. Her doctor told her, if you don't stop with this overeating, you're going to have serious complications. When I met her, she had a seeing eye dog and was waiting for a kidney transplant. Fear doesn't do it. So, what Hank told the guy was that if this person follows the usual pattern, he'll go on a bigger bust than ever. Well, what's the usual pattern, right? We binge, we feel disgusted with ourselves, we make a resolution I won't do this again. But we don't have the power to keep our own resolution. So we do it again, feel guilty, hate ourselves, make another resolution, on and on and on for years and sometimes decades. And then Hank pointed out, I've had nothing to drink, whatever, for 3 years because he's worked these steps. And this in the face of difficulties that would have made 9 out of 10 men drink their heads off. So he's saying he had hard difficulties, but he didn't drink. And here's, I guess, another principle. Circumstances are never the cause of relapse. I went through a double miscarriage when I was in this program. It was a horrible thing. I didn't pick up. I went through the deaths of both my parents, my mom through Alzheimer's, my dad from Parkinson's. I didn't pick up. But yet before when I was binging, if there was a boy I liked who didn't like me back, well, that was an excuse for, a big fat binge, right? Circumstances are never the cause of relapse. So here's Hank. He feels bad, like he knows this guy is not going to make it, even though he was threatened. And page 139, he says, there was nothing to do but wait. Sometimes, if a person isn't willing to go to any lengths, sometimes all we can do is wait and pray. We can always pray. And they say, presently the man did slip. He drank again. He was fired. Without much ado, he accepted the principles and procedures that had helped us. Well, of course he did because he was at bottom, right? So what are the principles and the procedures? Well, I think the procedure is the steps, 12 steps, the principles, things like honesty, self-sacrifice for the good of others. And I have a sponsee who went through the big book and made a list of all the principles in the text section, and it's available on our website, and Steph will put the link in the chat. And he said, okay, now this guy's going to recover. To me, this incident illustrates lack of understanding as to what really ails the alcoholic. And lack of knowledge as to what part the employers might play. So for us, we need to know what really ails the alcoholic, the compulsive eater. What's the real problem? Well, page 45. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. Not lack of desire, not lack of a good moral code, not lack of a good food plan, lack of power. And so the solution, we had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Where and how are we going to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. So that's what this book is going to teach us, right? That's what we, as sponsors, are going to guide our sponsees to get a relationship with this power that's greater than ourselves. And they continue talking to the employer. If you desire to help, it might be well to disregard your own drinking or lack of it. Whether you're a hard drinker, moderate drinker, or a teetotaler, you may have strong opinions, maybe prejudices. Now, again, they're talking to an employer. I think all of us who are here, recovered, sponsoring, we're not hard drinkers. Hard drinkers are the people who can stop if they really need to. Moderate drinkers, they can stop more easily. And teetotalers, they're the people who say, I'm just never going to touch it. There may be people out there who say, you know what? Sugar or whatever isn't good for me, so I'm just going to stay away from it totally. God bless them. I don't know how they do it, but some people are able to do it. And they say you may have some pretty strong opinions, perhaps prejudices. And I would say a good spiritual principle is that we're not supposed to have prejudices. Some people in OA think that no sugar or flour or wheat or anything, they think that's like from the devil. And then there's people who have more moderate food plans. I'll tell you how I deal with it. I don't talk about my food plan with anyone except my sponsors. I just don't talk about it because I don't want people to either judge me or to say, well, if she can do that, then I must be able to do that, even if maybe I can eat something that you can't, and you may be able to eat something that I can't. So our food plans are between us, our nutritionist, our sponsor, and God. And really, ultimately, it's a question of honesty. If I'm eating something that I know causes me to, obsess or think about food too much, the issue is really dishonesty. So we have to be honest about what we can and can't do about our food plans, but we don't need to have strong opinions about everyone's food plan. Page 140. This is helpful for us as sponsors. Can you discard the feeling that you're dealing only with habit, with stubbornness, or a weak will? People who are eating compulsively, it's not that they have bad habits, it's not that they're stubborn or that they have a weak will. I mean, we all have no willpower when it comes to this. Our willpower in this area is strangely different than it is in other areas. And I have a one-page handout explaining it about the broken bridge, and Stephanie will put the link in. It's not bad habits, stubbornness, or weak will. And they say, if you concede that your employee is ill, can he be forgiven for what he has done in the past? Can his past absurdities be forgotten? So I think a few principles here. One, we see struggling compulsive eaters as sick, not bad. We see them as ill. Ill people need treatment, they need medicine, right? But we don't judge them. We certainly don't judge someone who has cancer. Oh, they're acting that way because they have cancer. No, we have compassion. And so we need to have compassion. And it says, can he be forgiven for what he's done in the past? So we need to be people who forgive. And then they go even further. Can his past absurdities be forgotten? Okay, I can't make myself forget, right? If so, let's say, I don't know, my husband or one of my kids does something harmful to me, and then they apologize and I forgive them. I can't wave a magic wand over my memory and make myself forget. But here's what I can do as far as forgetting. I can never bring it up again. So if, let's say, my husband does something that hurts me, he apologizes, I forgive him. Then 2 weeks later, he does something else. I can't say, well, 2 weeks ago, you also did whatever it was. It gets forgotten. It talks about that in chapter 6. Unless some good and useful purpose will come, we don't bring up past mistakes. Okay, page 141. It talks about someone who's still drinking, or for us binging, and it says, afterward, his revulsion will be terrible, right? We feel guilty, but a healthy conscience won't help me. It's good to have a healthy conscience. When I was in the food, I did not have a healthy conscience. I didn't care who I hurt or what I did as long as I got what I want. But a healthy conscience is great, but it doesn't give me power. Um, and again, our book talks about, in the doctor's opinion, page XXX, we are people who are over remorseful. Being over remorseful, again, doesn't help because it doesn't give me power. And they say, okay, but not all alcoholics or not all compulsive eaters are honest and upright, even when they're not drinking. I mean, that was me. I was not honest and I was not upright, even when I wasn't shoving food down my throat. I just wasn't. Um, and they say, make sure people aren't trying to take advantage of your kindness, right? We are here to instruct people on how to get a relationship with God. My sponsor says it's the job of a sponsor to take her sponsee's hand and put it in the hand of God. That's my job. It's not my job to be like a marriage counselor, a kid counselor, a life coach, a bank, anything like that. So it says, if you are sure your man does not want to stop, he may as well be discharged, the sooner the better. And I think that goes for sponsoring. But look what they say. If you are sure he doesn't want to be stopped, doesn't want to stop. Just because someone is still in the food does not mean he or she does not want to stop. They may be unable. They don't have the power yet. How do I know if they don't want to stop? If they're not willing to do the work, plain and simple. If I say, go to X number of meetings a week, I want you to make X phone calls a day, not for busy work, but because meetings are where you're going to get information that we can apply so that we can recover, right? Phone calls, and I give people number of recovered people, are ways to have connection and fellowship so that when a problem comes, they're not just relying on me. I would drown if all my sponsees called me every time they had a problem. They need to be involved in a fellowship. Okay. But if they say, yeah, no, I'm not willing to make calls and I'm not willing to go to meetings and I'm not willing to do this step work, then, they may want to stop binging, but they're not willing to pay a price. Remember, on page 58, it tells us who's entitled to a sponsor. It says, if you have decided you want what we have, and what do we have? A spiritual experience as the result of these steps, and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. So the converse is, if you don't want a spiritual awakening and you're not willing to do the work, don't take a sponsor. You're not entitled to a sponsor. So people sometimes say, well, what do I do if I have a sponsee who's not willing to do what I say? And I say, you have one talk with her about, listen, this is the only way I know how to do it. If you don't do it, I can't help you. And if she continues to not do it, go find someone else to help. Not willing. The person, again, sometimes all we can do is wait until a person hits bottom. Okay, and he says, Hank is now talking about his own position. Had they fired me first, and had they then taken steps to see I was presented with the solution contained in this book, I might have returned to them 6 months later, a well man. I have personally seen, I mean, he was a hardcore alcoholic. I've seen compulsive eaters get better, like truly better, and able to help people in way less than that. Generally, I've seen it's about 2 months, 2 months of really doing this work. And they say, there are many men who want to stop. With them, you can go far. Your understanding treatment of their cases will pay dividends. Isn't that beautiful? Like, you think if you put money in the bank and you get dividends. And what are the dividends we get here? Well, that person recovers and then goes on to sponsor more people who go on to sponsor more people. Like, we get the best spiritual dividends. So what's required? Desire, and then the application of correct information. So let's go to the top of page 142. It says, next, he, meaning the prospect, can be assured that you do not intend to lecture, moralize, or condemn. So it's principle here. We don't lecture, which is kind of funny because I'm kind of doing a lecture now, but we'll call this an informative talk. I'm not lecturing y'all. Moralize, right? That's taking a high moral ground, or condemning. Again, none of us got here through that. So we don't lecture, moralize, or condemn. It says, if possible, express a lack of hard feeling toward him. I think it's really important that our sponsees don't feel hard feelings, and in fact, they feel the opposite, that they feel cared for. People recover in an environment where they feel cared for. Okay. So only after that, only after they feel that they are cared for, that we care about them, it says, then it might be well to explain alcoholism, the illness, right? Again, the broken bridge, how the willpower that keeps me from going near cats because I have a severe cat allergy, which would lead to a cat-induced asthma attack, the willpower that works there does not work when it comes to eating compulsively. There's a broken bridge between my memory and my conscious mind there. We need to understand that completely, and we need to be able to explain it. So when I'm going through the steps, I show my sponsees, I teach them about the broken bridge, and then I want them to personalize it. Give me examples in your life about how your bridge works, right? The big book talks about hot stoves. I talk about my cat allergy. So I say, give me examples from your own life. Sometimes people say, I went out in the sun without sunscreen. I got a bad sunburn. And now by willpower, I can always remember to put sunscreen on. And then I say, give me examples from your own life of how it didn't work when it came to food. And so she might say, I tell myself I'm just going to have one, even though 50 times before I ate the whole bag, box, carton, and it doesn't work. I can't remember. Or she might say, I tell myself that I don't care if I binge, forgetting that every time I woke up the next day after the binge, I really did care. So we need to be able to explain it ourselves so that we can explain it to someone that we're trying to help. And says, okay, once a person understands, we've explained the broken bridge, say, will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? Again, not to lose 20 pounds so that I look good for my high school reunion, so that boy who rejected me when I was 16 eats his heart out. No, we want to stop for good. And not just because we want to get thin, because remember, we're powerless over food and our lives are unmanageable, right? We'll do anything to get better. And it says, if he says yes, does he really mean it? We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points. Be satisfied he's not deceiving himself or you. Okay, why do we need to do that? And here's why I think. Let's say someone starts, they get a ways through the steps, and then they haven't been willing to go to any lengths. They leave either because it's not working for them, or I say, you're not willing to go to any lengths. This isn't happening. But usually they won't get success. Well, it would have been better off if we never would have started with them in the first place. And here's why. Now he or she is going to go away and say, I did this 12 steps and they didn't work. But they weren't really doing it. I have a sponsee and she said, I've tried and tried so many times before and it hasn't worked. And I said, is there any dishonesty in your life? And she said, yeah. And it was a big dishonesty. I'm like, you weren't working this program. You may have been going to meetings, making phone calls, doing inventories, but you were not working this program because this program requires rigorous honesty. So we don't want people to go away thinking, I did this and it didn't work. It's better off if I say, page 58 tells me I'm not allowed to sponsor you. I am only allowed to sponsor people who are willing to go to any lengths. And you're not. Here's the evidence. I've told you to do A, B, C. You haven't done A, you haven't done B, and you've only done C halfway. That's not willing to go to any lengths. I say, we part friends. I'm always here. You can always call. You can always go to any meeting, but I'm really not allowed to sponsor you. This way, if in 6 months, a year, she hits bottom, she'll remember, you know what? There's this program, and I wasn't willing then, but I've gained a bunch of weight, or my life is a train wreck now, and I'm willing now. And then the person can come back and get helped. They say if the person temporizes, and that means to temporarily adopt a particular course of action, avoiding making a real commitment, and still thinks he can ever drink again, he may as well be discharged at the next bender. Either you're dealing with a man who can and will get well, or you are not. If not, why waste time with him? This may seem severe, but it is usually the best course. Again, they are stressing we are not supposed to sponsor people who aren't willing to go to any lengths. And they say, okay, after satisfying yourself, he wants to recover and that he will go to any extreme to do so, then you can suggest a definite course of action. So, how can we tell if someone's willing before we really get into it with them? So, someone asks me to sponsor her. I don't say yes right away. I don't say no right away. I mean, sometimes I say no if like I'm overly booked, and then I'll try and help her find someone else. But I never say yes right away. I give her things to do so we can see. In this book, in the chapter Working with Others, it says before your second visit, he has read this book and says he is prepared to go through with this program of recovery. So if someone isn't familiar with this program, I might ask her to read a good chunk of the book. What I often do is make her suffer through a podcast I did on building a bridge to God, because that explains how I understand this illness, how I understand what a first step is and why we're powerless. And she'll listen and she'll understand my approach, that my approach is we get a relationship with God. She comes back to me, we talk some more. Then I give her something else to do, make her suffer through my podcast on the doctor's opinion. And then I come back, meet with her, and I go through things in the doctor opinion. And I ask her, what stood out to you? Do you have any questions? I answer all her questions. I've heard there's some sponsors who say, don't come to me with questions. That is ridiculous. We are guides. We are here to answer people's questions. So by now, okay, she's understands how I work. I've had probably 3 conversations with her. Then I tell her what I require of my sponsees, and I say, take the night and think about it. Even if she says, oh, I'm sure I want to proceed, I'm like, great, I really hope you do, but take the night and think about it. And then the next day she says, yes, I want to move forward, then we move forward. So you see, and even then, sometimes she'll say, okay, I'll do everything. I've done everything so far. But 2 weeks later, no, not willing to go to any length. It's okay. I mean, we don't have crystal balls. I'm not responsible for reading people's minds. I'm just responsible for probing and trying to do the best I can to see if she's willing to go to any lengths. Okay, page 143. They say sometimes a certain amount of physical treatment is desirable, even imperative. For me, I think a food plan is desirable, even imperative. I don't generally care what food plan someone's on as long as it's reasonable and has boundaries. But just like alcoholics can have alcohol, their plan is no alcohol. Obviously, we can't have a no eating plan, but we can have no eating outside certain boundaries plans. And the reason for that is how else are we going to know if we're eating compulsively if we don't have a food plan? I could rationalize anything to myself. So I asked my sponsees to have a food plan. And they say, though, if your man accepts your offer, it's page 143, It should be pointed out that physical treatment is but a small part of the picture. So the emphasis is not on a food plan. They have a food plan, but that's a tiny part. Though you're providing him with the best possible medical attention, he should understand that he must undergo a change of heart. Well, what is a change of heart? Do I take my heart out and go to the store and get a new heart and change it? Obviously not. They're talking about a spiritual experience. Page 25. We have had deep and effective spiritual experiences that have revolutionized the way we think about God, ourselves, our fellows. And it says the central fact of our lives is our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish for us what we could never do for ourselves. A change of heart, right? To get over drinking will require a transformation of thought and attitude. When I think of transformation, I think of caterpillar to butterfly. The butterfly doesn't move around the way a caterpillar did. I'm assuming doesn't go for food the way a caterpillar did, and is so much more beautiful than a caterpillar. Can fly. And that's what God wants for us, the transformation of thought and attitude. How do we get it? We all had to place recovery above everything, for without recovery, we would have lost both home and business. Two most common idols, right? Our jobs and our home. And when they talk about home, what do they mean? Our marriage, our kids, how our kids are doing, the relationships in the home. Recovery has to come first. Okay, page 144, they tell us, we suggest you draw the book to the attention of the doctor who's to attend your patient during treatment. Well, again, unless we're going to someone who's in an eating disorder clinic, doesn't really apply. But it says, if the book is read the moment the patient is able, while acutely depressed, realization of his condition may come to him. We should not be just going to meetings and telling people, oh, don't worry, it'll get better, without divine intervention and intervention from understanding fellows. It doesn't get better, it gets worse. In the chapter Working with Others, it says we are supposed to stress the hopelessness of our condition. We stress that it's hopeless, again, without divine intervention. And it says, you are betting, of course, that your changed attitude, love, plus the contents of this book, correct information, will turn the trick. In some cases it will, in others it may not. But if you persist, the percentage of successes will gratify you. It means there will never be 100%. I could do everything right and the person could still not recover. It's never up to me. So for one thing, it keeps me humble, right? If everyone I sponsored recovered and did great, I would probably get, quite this complex about how great I am. Believe me, I have plenty of failures. It also tells me I can do everything right, and they fail because I'm not responsible for anyone's recovery or anyone's relapse, and no one is responsible for mine. And they say, we hope your employees may be put in personal contact with some of us. Meanwhile, we are sure a great deal can be accomplished by the use of the book alone. We don't need the perfect sponsor, but we do need a competent sponsor. What makes someone a competent sponsor? She's worked these steps, has a relationship with God, practices spiritual principles, not always perfectly, or none of us could ever sponsor, and knows that her job is to take your hand and put it in the hand of God. So page 145, they say, again, they're talking to the employer. Can you remain undisturbed if he tells you shocking things, like he padded his expense account? They say this program demands rigorous honesty, so he might. So a couple principles here. First, of course, rigorous honesty. And second, when we're working with people and they tell us shocking things, We are not to judge them, but for the grace of God, we could have done those same shocking things. And I've done a lot of those shocking things and even worse. So we are not in a position to judge anyone. Then they go ahead with a couple principles that are specific to a business environment. Don't bear business tales or criticize associates. We don't need to be the company town crier. And even in our other relationships, we don't criticize others. We don't bear tales. We don't gossip. It says the greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. Well, we know what resentment is. Jealousy, a hostile attitude toward a rival or someone I believe has an advantage. Envy, coveting what someone else has. Frustration, things aren't going my way. And fear, afraid I'm not going to get what I want or I'm going to lose something I have. And these are things we have to guard against. And then they tell about an alcoholic who got drunk. Someone was slyly carrying tales. I think a spiritual principle here is that we don't slyly, sneakily carry tales. How can we do that? Under the guise of, oh, can you pray for so and so? She's cheated on her husband and needs prayers. No, we don't do things like that. Or she's cheated on her husband and she needs help. No, we keep our mouths shut. We don't slyly carry tales. And they say that decreases a person's chance of recovery. Why? If someone doesn't feel cared for, it decreases their chance of recovery. So page 146, it says the employer can't play favorites, but he can always defend a man from needless provocation and unfair criticism. We can protect people from bullies. Another principle, it says your man should be on his mettle to make good. We should be on our mettle. We should be trying to make up for the things we've done that have hurt other people. And then they go ahead and they say, this work, helping others, is necessary to maintain our sobriety, right? So sponsoring is necessary. At the bottom of the page, they talk about a man who gets drunk and they're talking to his wife. They say his wife may call and say he's sick. You may think he's drunk. If he is and is still trying to recover, he will tell you about it, even if it means the loss of his job. For he knows he must be honest if he would live at all. See how they're stressing honesty? Even if he gets drunk and thinks if he tells his boss he'll lose his job. We are people who have to be honest. And page 147, a beautiful promise. If he is conscientiously following the program of recovery, he can go anywhere your business may call him. If we're conscientiously following this program, we can go anywhere and do anything. Now, in the beginning, yes, sometimes we have to shield ourselves, right, as we're recovering. But it should get to the point where we can go anywhere and do anything because we no longer have an alcoholic mind, a compulsive eater mind. Again, they continue in stress. If you are sure he doesn't mean business, there is no doubt you should discharge him, right? And they tell that to the employer. They say you should feel under no obligation to keep him on. They say if he stumbles even once, for your obligation has been well discharged. That is for an employer. For a sponsor, we still should feel obligated. Remember, 25% of the original AAs failed at the beginning, recovered after some relapse. So a boss has the luxury of saying, you stumbled, you're out. We don't. We want to probe and see, is he or she willing to go to any lengths? If not, I don't the first time say, oh, you didn't do everything, you're out. I give them another chance, but I don't give them 10 other chances. If they're not doing what I say, if they are doing everything I say, I will try and keep trying. But I have found that when people do this work, they stop binging. It's a formula for recovery. Okay, page 148. Again, they say, No man should be fired just because he's an alcoholic. If he wants to stop, he should be afforded a real chance. If he cannot or does not want to stop, he should be discharged. So for sponsoring, everyone is entitled to a real chance. Page 149, bunch of spiritual principles at the very bottom. It is not to be expected that an alcoholic employee will receive a disproportionate amount of time and attention. He should not be made a favorite. So, spiritual principle. We should not look to be a favorite of our boss, of our sponsor. I look to be my husband's favorite, and that's okay. But we do not need to be everyone's favorite. Number two, the right kind of man, the kind who recovers, will not want this. He will not impose. So again, we don't impose on people. Number three, he will work like the devil. So we work hard at our recoveries, at our jobs. And four, he will thank you to his dying day. We're grateful to the people who help us. And most of all, of course, we are grateful to God. So page 150, he talks about, he has two recovered alcoholic employees who now produce as much as five normal salesmen. And this is what he says. But why not? They have a new attitude and they've been saved from a living death. They've been rescued. Remember, if we have this illness, we need to be rescued. We can't rescue ourselves. No one climbs out of quicksand himself. And then look how he ends. I have enjoyed every moment spent in getting them straightened out. Well, when I was eating compulsively, I didn't enjoy helping people because it took away time from like me. But they're saying our joy returns to us, right? Remember page 133. We are sure that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. Now, I can't pursue that. I can't go through life pursuing happiness, joy, and freedom. It didn't work. But when I pursue God through these 12 steps, the guaranteed result is a spiritual experience, right? God coming into my heart and life in a way which is indeed miraculous. And when he does that for me, for us, how could we not be happy, joyous, and free? And with that, I will pass.